Welcome to our climate studio, live from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. We bring together experts from science, politics, and spirituality to explore the unfolding climate disaster and give you an update from the climate conference. Myself, I'm Golo Pilz, and I will be the moderator for tonight's session. And we talk on conflict and cooperation. The countdown to the end of COP29 is upon us. The climate summit has hardly 2 days left to agree on climate finances towards the developing countries to deal with floods, droughts, heat waves, and adapt towards renewable energies. According to experts, almost $1 trillion is needed annually in the next decade to deal with the unfolding climate crisis. Officials spent the first week trying to agree on new rules for carbon markets, the fossil fuel market, and efforts to mitigate the rise of global temperature. Now, the outstanding items have been handed over to the ministers, and everybody hope in the last days of the climate conference they can resolve all the issues and come to a final agreement. I'm very glad to have two experts with me tonight who hopefully can shed some light on this rather complicated topic. I have with me Mihir Mathur. Welcome, Mihir.
Thank you.
You founded DESTA Research LLP in 2018 and you're living in New Delhi.
Yes.
DESTA uses systems thinking and modeling to help organizations to improve their decision making. Mihir also runs a theater group, I read, in Delhi, and you create music to spread the message of sustainability by combining science and art. That's very interesting. I would like to hear more about that a little bit later. And I have Sister Jayanti with us. Sister Jayanti, you are the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, with more than 6,000 meditation centers in India and 600 abroad. The Brahma Kumaris is accredited since 2009 to the United Nations for Climate Change Conference. And Sister Jayanti, you have been to many, many climate conferences since then. You're also one of the veterans, I would say, of the whole conference. Welcome very much.
Thank you.
This brings us to the first question. Mihir, please tell us a bit how systems thinking and modeling can help in climate change. What is system thinking? When I read it, I didn't really get an idea what it actually behind it. I thought it must be something with computers and modeling. And I also read that you use music and art to spread the awareness about climate change. Please share a little bit to our audience about that.
Sure. Namaste.
Namaste.
It's an honor to sit next to you.
Thank
Sister
you.
Jayanti. Systems thinking essentially asks us to look at things as a whole rather than breaking them down into parts. The problem is that specialists and experts are trying to optimize their own part of the system. So the economists are busy optimizing economics. The environmentalists are busy saving the environment. And now there's stalemate because they're looking at different parts of the system, but they're not looking at the interactions between them. So for a very long time, humans were impacted by the climate, but today we are impacting the climate. And that is again impacting us. So it's a causality, it's a feedback loop. So we say systems are interconnected wholes, not separated by parts. But reductionism asks us to break down a system into its elements and tackle them separately with the hope that the whole can be fixed. It's not working. It's clearly not working. In a city, different departments are optimizing different parts of the city system with the hope that the quality of life can be improved. It's clearly not working. So we say, look at the interconnections in a system, study the system, and then think through how your interventions are impacting the whole and not just the parts. Because to solve one problem, you end up creating another problem in another part of the system. And the world is trapped into this. Right? We are not able to break out of the trap. So what do? We keep providing symptomatic solutions. And the world is continuously providing symptomatic solutions, not changing systems. So that's what we do. We help people look at systems formally, scientifically, create models, and then help them think about what interventions they wish to do by generating scenarios of what could happen if you intervened in the system.
Are you using AI?
Not yet. We rather rely on human intelligence. So we don't want to outsource the intelligence to an artificial network. So we say people have to think through systems rather than relying on computers to think through systems. Otherwise, you're slaves of electronic oracles.
Very nice. So how is music and theater coming into the picture and you create awareness about climate change?
So we run a theater group in Delhi. It's called Fitur.
Fitur.
Yes. And I wrote a play script and I wanted to show the large change that has happened in the last 60, 70 years. Okay. So we wrote a script where we showed how one family has transitioned from the 1960s till the modern era. So we showed multiple dimensions in that play. We showed the environment, we showed the social cultural change, we showed how nuclear families are coming in and how gadgets, air pollution. So I use a lot of my whole systems thinking when I think about plays and writing scripts. So we do theater on environmental issues.
Very nice. So with the modeling, you give input to the brain, and with the art, you give input to the heart.
So I have to balance the two.
Art and heart. Yes. It rhymes. Wonderful. Great. That's fantastic. Thanks very much for sharing. Jayanti, climate change is accelerating and people to suffer from drought, heat waves or floods. I know the Brahma Kumaris, especially in India, is helping in cases of natural disaster as good as possible with our resources. From a spiritual perspective, is there a specific reason for suffering of individuals or on collective level? Is there a spiritual practice to deal with such tragic situations?
If we look at the cycle of human history, and I would say that it is a cycle rather than linear, you see a time when there's truth and purity, and gradually that changes to a mixture in which there's a little bit of truth, a little bit of falsehood. But then it gives way to a situation which we're in now called post-truth, and there's no truth left. The era of truth has been left behind, and there's just generally a state of falsehood and ignorance. And so this is a state that's described as Kali Yuga, the dark age, and it's a time when they say that it's tamasic, the tamas, negative power is potent. And so at such a time, and we're all in that, it's not that different parts of the world are in different cycles, but we're part of the same. And so at such a time when there's negativity and darkness, the question is why? And the answer for me makes sense is that the soul starts its journey with purity and gradually loses its purity. And by the time it comes to Kali Yuga, it's lost most of its purity. There's very little purity left. And so the impurity of the inner being, it creates the impurity and the imbalance in nature outside. And if I put it in different language, if today there's greed and anger and ego, attachments, what is this doing to us? But also, what is it doing to the planet? And then you see why there are these tragedies. It's not God who made the world such a tragic place, but it's human beings through that loss of power of purity that have created the conditions of chaos. To be able to reverse that, we need to come back to our own original state of purity, which is possible, but only through the connection with the divine. As we draw that spiritual power, that brings about the change, and we're able to move and transition into a better world. And so, yes, there is a method that's going to be able to lift us out of this darkness.
So there is no quick fix for the problems we're having right now.
It's actually quicker to resolve it than it's been to create it. So it is a quick fix.
We just heard we need a couple of $1 trillion to fix the problem, but as you mentioned, we need inner transformation and go back to ethics and values and bring them into our life, you know.
Correct.
To bring back divine consciousness. Very interesting. Thanks very much for sharing that with us. Mihir, coming back to you, you live in India, which is already very seriously affected by climate change. This summer we had a real dramatic heat wave in many parts of India, and in May I was actually in Delhi when the temperature crossed 50 degrees for sure. There was some debate if the temperature meter was correct or not, but they say it was 52 degrees, was an all-time record in Delhi. It was quite dramatic, I would say. You didn't know what you should do if you not have an AC. It was like a killer. It really killed people. So there's a lot of talking now in India on adaptation. Suddenly in India now, since 2 years, everybody talks on sponge cities or reforestation and so on. A lot of ideas are popping up what India can do. Please share with us some successful initiatives in India, what can be done in terms of adaptation.
Sure. So
maybe where you are involved also.
Yeah. I more and more believe that adaptation is the way forward. We are almost at 1.5 degrees already. We are certainly looking at 2 degrees likelihood now. And IPCC once said that 2 degrees and beyond is dangerous climate change. So mitigation had its window. It still has a small window left, but I think it's adaptation going forward. Now, the challenge with adaptation is that it's not measurable, unlike emissions. So people think it is fuzzy. Can you make a public policy on adaptation? It's very difficult to do. But still, people have to adapt. Now, there are different ways of adapting. You can switch on air conditioner and also adapt, but that's like maladaptation. The actions you take causes more harm to the environment, and then you have to adapt more. You're maladapting. Unfortunately, that is what is happening right now. So we need to change that. Successful initiatives, yes, I know organization who worked in South India, and they have successfully restored rainforests in the Valparai Plateau.
Where in the
Valparai Plateau, Annamalai Reserve,
Valparai Plateau.
Annamalai Hills. From Coimbatore, you go to towards that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have been there. We did a case study on them, how they did it. It's wonderful. Second organization I know in Rajasthan, they are conserving sacred groves, community managed sacred groves. They have mapped 25,000 such groves, and people for around 1500 years managed their livelihoods, and they got their resilience from the sacred groves next to which they lived. So it has a long history, but these are fast eroding now. We are having examples of borewell pumps being put inside those grooves for water because people are really getting the pressure. Organizations are trying to conserve that. We have 100 solar cities as in plan in India. We did modeling for 2 cities, and based on that, some budgets have been put in place. So hopefully we'll get more of such things. I know an organization working in Gujarat trying to conserve the mangroves. In Bachau block in Kutch, where you will find the only swimming camels of the world. Camels which swim in the sea. They are called kharai camels. They will swim and graze on the mangroves. So there are amazing work happening. It's just that I feel it's far and few in between. You have to really hunt and find those out. It is not yet catched the fancy of the mainstream. So clearly, I mean, adaptation gets 1/10 of the funds that a mitigation gets. So that's the disparity that needs to change.
Well, maybe religious or spiritual organizations can play also a bigger role in adaptation. Brahma Kumaris, for example, is one of the biggest institutional user of solar energy in India, and we're trying to go green in our centers, equip them with renewable energies, and the people who come, they see, oh, Brahma Kumaris has a solar system, we also should put a solar system there. And I can imagine that in the very, very soon in India also, a new legislation will come into power where they will make it mandatory, for example, to put a solar system on a new building, or, to build with the climate, not against the climate, or tree plantation and all this kind of activities.
So adaptation has to be localized. You cannot have centralized adaptation of people. That's the conundrum.
I mean, in Israel, they did very successful bylaws for construction, and there every new building has to have a solar system on rooftop. So that's not bad, for the solar, if that is mandatory. But thanks very much for sharing these initiatives in India, and hopefully more and more such initiatives will come up, and people will get inspired and use them, you know. This brings me back to Sister Jayanti. Our today topic is from conflict to cooperation. And this conference is overshadowed by geopolitical conflicts and lots of tension, Gaza, Ukraine war, and so on. But there's also gender conflict and conflict between poor nations and rich nations and so on. Can you describe a pathway out of conflicts towards love and cooperation?
More and more people, especially since COVID times, are turning to meditation. During COVID times, thousands, millions of people were checking in with Google to see what is meditation, what is prayer. And so since those days, I think there's been a huge increase in people searching for spiritual practices that they can apply in their daily lives. And so I see this escalating. There used to be a time when people were closet meditators. They didn't want other people to know that that's what they were doing. And now meditation's become fashionable. People love to say, oh yes, I meditate. And so it's a very good sign as far as I can see. So the spiritual change of consciousness that I spoke about in moving from the dark age to the age of truth, I think that movement has happened already, and it's accelerating fast. So I think that once I begin to meditate myself, I can feel how my own mind becomes calm and peaceful. The struggle and the tension between conscience and feelings, that gets resolved. I'm able to align myself properly. So my relationships are built up on that basis in a very harmonious way. Now multiply that several times, and you see that that's a sort of change that can happen within, even if it's a minority. But if it's a powerful minority, that can swing things so that the majority begins to understand these ideas. So I see that that's the transformation pathway from conflict to cooperation and love.
That's very interesting. I once read that only 2% of a society have to change to initiate actually a mainstream change. 2% is not that much. So let us be part of that 2% and initiate the change towards meditation. Very nice. Coming back to you, Mihir, in this COP, there's a lot of talk on technology and funding. You know, it's all the man considered as a technical problem, you know. It's the male approach. But it seems the heart is not really into the negotiations. If the heart would be there, there would be more action, you know, there would be more compassion. And we can see that talks are also stalling, you know, and a lot of negotiation and shoveling is going on. How to bring rational understanding into concrete, measurable action? What has to change at the climate conference as per your understanding?
I have had my difficulties with the climate negotiations. First difficulty that I have is with the word negotiation. Because the moment I'm sitting on a table with the idea of negotiation, my mental model is, in this negotiation, I need to take out more than what I'm giving. The moment that happens, it's a difficult battle. Sometime I would be very happy to see if the word negotiation is replaced with offerings. So we are not tracking negotiations, we're tracking climate offerings. So the conference of party happens for climate offerings and not negotiations. That needs to change. The process which has not worked needs to be reinvented. Why do people have to come to one location to think about climate offerings? Why can't the process be decentralized? See, we got to replicate the process. The scale will happen through replication of the process, not through centralization of the process alone. So we have to work in our own circles. You should have COP in your own cities. It's your business to sustainably live. You can't be relying on a set of computer models which churn numbers. What are computer models? I am a modeler. Models are simplifications of reality. They are probabilistic. They give you likelihood of what is likely to happen. We are putting too much faith in that, to be honest. We are putting way too much faith on that. 66% probability. Well, what about the rest 34%? That's a big margin to live when you're talking about what should we do in climate action. I would say take charge, decentralize the process in your minds first, and change this word from negotiation to something else which is a little more positive. The second is with the theory that we are using, the belief systems. The belief system here is still on return on investments. So the climate funding is still seen as an investment. So if you put the money, will we get the return on investment? That's why bulk of the money is not reaching the right places. It has taken us 30 years to make renewable energy affordable. The meteorologists and the scientists have been using solar panels and satellites for ages now. The first electric car came in 1971. So free markets, are they really responding to the needs of the people? Or are they responding to the theory that we have put in place that we are chasing? So complex problems have simple solutions, which are extremely difficult to accept and implement. So change is quite simple. It starts from inside. There is no public policy on what is the inner change that you need to do, but it is upon us how we rethink our own belief systems and reinvent ourselves. So my takeaway and my thought process is take charge. Don't leave it to some magic to happen somewhere.
So let us do more local initiatives.
Yes, and educate yourself.
Let us take charge. And I like very much the word offerings, which you mentioned instead of negotiations. It gives a totally new idea, feeling to the whole thing.
I mean, imagine if I come to a climate conference and what am I tracking? I'm tracking the climate offerings that nations are giving to each other.
I once read a book, it's called Word Shapes Worlds. So if you change the words, you change the world. It's very interesting. So I like very much what you have said. And this brings us slowly to the end of our panel discussion, and great inspirations from both of you so far. And Sister Jayanti, maybe you can guide us in a meditation how to overcome conflict and how we can come to cooperation.
Can I go on a different journey, a journey within, which I see to what extent am I able to find peace within myself and go beyond conflict? And I find that the deeper that I go within, leaving the world outside where it belongs, so that I can explore the space inside. Inner space is a space of quiet, of calm, of peace, in which I realize that peace is my natural state. Conflict is not natural, it's unnatural. Peace is natural. And I hold this awareness of peace, and I send out vibrations of peace, so that peace reaches people in this room, but beyond the city and country, out into the world. Peace can touch human hearts, and their hearts are able then to understand things differently. With peace comes understanding, and with that understanding, compassion and empathy. And we find the way to cooperate. For the door is the door of peace, which lies within. Om Shanti.
Thanks very much, Sister Jayanti, to open the inner door to peace. How lovely. Thanks also very much, Mihir, for joining us today and explaining about systems and models and how they can help. and where also the limitation of these methods.
Thank you.
This brings us to the end of our session, and I like to thank very much our patrons and our sponsors for making this session possible. Thanks also very much to all our volunteers which are behind the camera. A lot of people are working on the studio to make it possible. Thanks very much. Please join us tomorrow. Tomorrow will be our last session. Very, very interesting. Don't miss it. An interesting session on climate wisdom from Baku live. And please visit our webpage for more information. And last not least, thanks very much to you, our audience, to stay with us. And we all hope you got inspired and you got one or the other information which make you think more on climate change and what you can do on a personal level. Thanks very much, and goodbye and good night from Baku in Azerbaijan.